Hey, this is Pietro, and in this video, I'm presenting you my iris-mcp-blueprint project. This actually is an example of how to implement an MCP server to work with InterSystems IRIS. Please note that this is just an example, it is not a finished product, so use it as instructional material to understand how to interact with IRIS using an MCP server. In this video, I'm not going to explain how MCP servers work and what is their architecture, but if you want more information about this topic, you can check my article on the InterSystems developer community. Well, you can test this MCP server or by cloning the GitHub repository or by connecting here to PyPy using UVX. You can test it both with your local or remote Iris instance or with a containerized instance using Docker that is inside the repository. I'm providing you a Docker Compose here that you can run to run an Iris container on port 9092. Okay, actually I just run my instance, and so we can look at it here. Obviously, to connect with to the instance, okay, and logging in, you can use the underscore system username and sys password. So the default username and password. Okay, then actually let's take a look to the project folder and let me explain you something more about this project. As you can see, there is a source folder that contains the overall implementation of the Python MCP server. The server has been realized as a fast MCP instance that is connected to InterSystems Iris using the Iris Python native SDK. Actually, you can see also three subfolders that represent the three main MCP primitives, so tools, prompts, and resources. The tools are the things that your AI assistants can call to perform actions on the instance. For example, execute a query or create a new web application. The resources are something like background information that your AI can read to gather context about your instance, okay, and to decide, for example, which action it should be take. The prompts are pre-built templates, so a set of instructions that can help the user to interact with the AI. Of course, you can use both the prompt or just chat with your MCP client. You can connect with this MCP server using any MCP client like Cursor or Cloud Desktop. I'm going to show you both. In this case, this is Cursor, and we can take a look at the .cursor folder to see how I connected to the MCP server. Actually, in the README file or of the GitHub repository, I explain you three ways to connect to the MCP server. In this way, this is the simplest. So I'm using UVX, and then I'm connected to the MCP server that is deployed on PyPy. But you can also connect with a local instance or connect to an MCP deployed on GitHub. If we take a look to Cloud Code, we can go to File, Settings, Developer, and then Modify Configuration. As you can see, I've already configured my iris-mcp blueprint. But let's look at this this JSON here. Okay, reload it. Okay, actually, this is the JSON file of the closed desktop configuration. As you can see, it's the same configuration of Cursor, The only difference is this in command, because sometimes Cloud doesn't recognize your UVX executable, and so you have to specify this. But it's quite easy to to find the path. Okay, you can open the Windows terminal, and then let's open a terminal where you can use where UV, for example, or where UVX. Okay, and just copy paste the path here. As I said, there are three ways to connect to the instance. The local configuration that is easy. This is useful when you're developing, you're implementing your MCP server. So all your code base is on a local folder and you're modifying it. Because any modification in the code base is actually immediately reflected into the MCP feature. Okay, and the configuration is calling UV, then a directory, and running the MCP server. The configuration using GitHub is quite similar to the one using PyPy. You are using UVX and then using from Git and specify the GitHub repository. The latest is also the simplest, so the PyPy configuration that I've already shown you at the now I'm using. Please note that in this case, we should specify which are the environment variables to connect to the desired iris instance. Also into the README file of my GitHub repository and PyPy, you will see an explanation of how to initialize a new project using UV. Okay, for example, just from scratch, and how to implement the MCP server, and finally how to publish the package to PyPy and invoking the MCP server using UVX. Okay. Then let's take a look to the code a little bit. Okay, because all the tools that I implemented here are divided into 5 categories that represent 5 main features of InterSystems IRIS. So we have tools to call the Atelier API that is really useful to handle the source code. We have tools to run class methods, so object script class methods that can be invoked directly by the MCP server. We have tools to handle the globals of InterSystems IRIS and to handle also the interoperability production. Finally, the last package of tool regards the the SQL operations. So read this table or fetch data, etc., insert data, etc. Okay, after we have configured on cursor the MCP server, we can see that cursor is successfully connected to the server from the tools and MCP menu. As you can see, my server here is composed by 26 tools, 7 prompts, and 3 resources. Okay, and it's the same on Cloud, but you will see here the MCP among the connectors and the same list. Okay. Now we can use the chat to ask something to the AI about our Iris instance. Okay, for example, hi, which InterSystems Iris version are we using? Okay, we can check this also on Iris. Into the about version is 2025.3. Okay. Okay, he misunderstood the question, but we can tell him, please use iris-mcp-blueprint to check the version. Okay. Okay, he's reading the tools and now is fetching some data. Okay, he called, as you can see, a class method to get a version, and so the response is 2025.3, as I said before. Okay, this is quite cool. Now, um, let's test something on Cloud. For example, I can use here on the GitHub repository, we have an example data folder in which there is a demo table. Okay, I can put this inside Cloud to tell him to import this table. Okay, let's call import CSV workflow. I can tell him, okay, the table name should be patient, and CSV sample is use the attached file. Okay. I can really use these fields as a regular chat. Okay, table schema can be MCP test, MCP table. Okay. Okay, now Claude will import my patient CSV into Iris, creating a new table. Then it will actually analyze the table and he will suggest me if I should add any index and all this thing. As we can see, is loading the tools. Okay. He checked if the table already exists and now is importing into Iris the data. So we can see everything from here. Okay. Okay, actually, he um, he uploaded the table into Iris. Now he's getting the class source of the new class that has been created, and it's gonna show me that he analyzed the content, he verified that all the tables are present and all the rows are present. Now it's recommending me, for example, to include some index. Okay, include an index on age and an index gender, for example. And now is going to create indexes on the specified columns. We can take a look on Iris. We will see that here we have a new table. Okay, the space is wrong. MCP. Okay, we have an MCP table dot patients as we expected, containing 56 rows. And let's take a look at the indexes. Okay, we have an index on age and an index on gender. Okay, really good. So now let's use cursor and let's try prompt from here. So iris-mcp. For example, I can use search for code. He will search for a specified string in the entire code base. I'm gonna search for the employee string. Then he is going to provide me the results of the search, and it will tell me, for example, okay, this string, I found this string into the employee classes, into this other class, etc. Okay, I found 4 classes. Okay, and then it is now asking me which class should it analyze. I want to analyze the employee class and the employer. Okay, And it's gonna tell me how this string is related to these classes. Is using the Atelier API to extracting the class source code from the instance, and now is checking the globals inside. Okay, and analyze the classes that I requested. Cool. So now I can ask him, for example, to okay, I can ask him to perform a method to invoke an object method. Okay, for example, invoke method populate and assign. Okay, is still explaining me how the string employee is involved into these two classes. So, okay, let's invoke the populate and assign method. The cool thing is that any MCP client, if we can run in any MCP client more than one AI assistant. So I can also run a new agent here and, for example, ask him to extract from iris. No, let's use a prompt, okay? It was the export table, okay? So extract the employee table. The format should be a JSON. Table schema is okay. Um, let's keep this empty. So cursor will need to identify on his own the schema, and I will add also extract only the first, I don't know, 30 rows of the employer of the employees, sorry, working for, let's look at one employee, one employer, sorry, example for this one. Okay, he actually, in this other chart, in parallel, he performed the populate and assign, and now he reported me the results. Okay. As I see, we have 10 columns and many employees here. Okay. 200 employees. Okay. And here we can, for example, do some operation, okay, on the globals, like show me the content of the global related to the index age, for example. So we're coming back to the patients table, and it's going to identify which is the global by looking at the source code, and it's going to list all the subscript. Okay. Actually, this is my global content. This is pretty cool because you can analyze or manipulate your global content as you want. Okay, it's gonna cursor is extracting the data in this case here. Okay, you notice that there is no SQL user dot employee. So if you found the MCP test dot employee, okay, using the information schema tables, extracted the first 5 rows, and okay, if you'd like me to write the file, okay, yes, write a file local folder. Okay, he's writing a JSON here with all the employee of uh, this employer. Actually, he's using probably the relationship declared here in the employee table. Okay. So we created a new file, and this is the result. Okay. Let's look at the last example. So let's try to use a prompt that we create a new REST endpoint from scratch. So into this instance, there is no production. Okay, there is no web app, and Cursor will create the production, the business components, and also the web app, and finally we'll test the production. So let's take a look. Okay, it requires me to specify a business process class. And okay, inside the prompt, I already specified the query service class, so it's using this. Okay, he actually found two business process classes, but one is the abstract class, so it is not recommended. So I'm gonna choose my query service. What is the name? Use the default settings. Okay. Okay. Which production should host? Use the currently active or how to create an empty one. Okay, if none is active. So exactly what I want. Okay, it's creating my new production with these business components. He created a plan to be executed. Now he's doing stuff here. We can say goodbye to Claude. Let's wait for Cursor to perform all these 10 steps. As you can see, it checked if there was any active production, but there wasn't any. Now step 2 is to start a production. Okay. Okay, it's creating an empty production now. Okay, that is called just empty production. Okay. So let's take a look here. Okay, there is a new production running, as you can see, with a new process inside. That is the process that I've specified before. Now it should have put also the service and is configuring the service to be compliant to the REST web, to be used with the REST web application. It loaded the data. Okay. It's configuring the service, as I said. Maybe, I don't know if you already created the web app, but let's take a look. Okay, this is the web app that Cursor created. So the REST user query service, etc., etc. I don't know which is the step, but let's register CSP web application. Okay, so should be here. Okay, and now he has just configured the query service. So, for example, configuring the target of this service to this process, and he tested the endpoint, sending a REST request, okay? And this is the response actually. So both endpoints respond correctly. This is the response, what he built. And we can see here the messages inside the production as well. Okay, pretty good. So I think that this was pretty much everything for this Iris MCP blueprint. I hope you like this project. And if so, please put a like on the article and a star on the GitHub repository. And now let's try to, it's your turn to try to implement your own MCP server to work with your specific InterSystems IRIS application.